Just before we start this morning, I thought it would be prudent as the Emergency Executive to make comment around some of the events that's happened that has touched us all over the last week, 10 days, and particularly the violence that has ensued as a result of the death of George Floyd. I think just as we've been touched in some way by the dreadful pandemic, we've also been touched by the importance of the scenes of the racial injustice in the US following the horrendous and violent treatment which resulted in the death of George Floyd. But we should stand in solidarity with the Black Matters Lives movement and with those who demand justice. Like so many, we want to stand in unity with the millions across the planet to show our solidarity with those protesting against racial injustice in the USA, but also to support those challenging racial injustice in Scotland. Equality, diversity and representation are the key priorities of Falkirk Council and are reflected in our corporate plan. We remain true to those as we strive to identify changes in our culture and practice that further open up Scotland's democracy. We must therefore work together actively to end violence and prejudice against those who are oppressed because of the colour of their skin, their sex, their culture, or their beliefs within our community. And as leaders, we must lead by example by showing our solidarity, our support to all those experiencing racism. There is no place for racism in Scotland or indeed anywhere else, and we need to make sure that Black Lives Matter. So I hope that people would feel comfortable in agreeing with that, that we make that statement as a council and going forward. Okay, is there anyone that just wishes to make a very brief comment? I'm not intending to open up to a full debate, but I think it's something that people will feel quite strongly around.
So sorry, I was speaking there unmuted, but now I hope you can hear me. I fully concur, as do I'm sure all members of the council agree with the words that you said just now, and totally abhor the events that we saw in the USA 10 days or so ago. So there's absolute agreement going forward that we move together in unity to call out racism of any description, wherever it is, whether it's in the US or whether it's here in Scotland.
Thank you, Malcolm. Robert Bissett.
Thanks, Convener. I totally concur with what you said. Personally, I don't tolerate any form of racism. I think it's divisive and oppressive. And like many people around the world, I was shocked at the death of George Floyd. And the just anger that has flown has mobilised populations from all ethnicities under the banner Black Lives Matter. And we should be clear what the slogan means. The fact that this has to be said is an indictment of all of us. And I think the level of prejudice, inequality has been plain for all of us to see for years. And we can no longer see this as not our problem. So we cannot make progress in tackling racism without understanding how the past affects the present. So at Falkirk Council, we do need to look at how inclusive we are in the Falkirk area and build a community where all are fully included and valued. And this may be uncomfortable for some, but yes, Black lives do matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coombs.
Very quickly, I was really glad to hear, obviously, all parties concurring to this because it has been a disgrace. I had to stop listening to it. It's because it's not just that one life. There's many, and as we look further and further down the line, but I also just wanted to say that I'm glad to hear that as a council we're making that statement, but I would have been far happier if I had heard our own UK government making a clearer statement about it.
Okay, folks, I thank you for those contributions, and I just thought it was important that we were able to reaffirm that, particularly and send a message out to our own communities. Move now in proper into our meeting, and I think we have a full complement, therefore there are no apologies. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Move to the minute of the emergency executive held on 28th of May. Are we happy to move that as a true record?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, is there any questions in relation to any of the particular items? I think it was fairly clear the outcomes on that. No. Okay, move forward to item 4, which is the Falkirk Council Strategic Plans and Vision Framework, and I'll ask our Chief Executive, Kenneth Laurie, to speak to the report. Kenneth.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, everybody. This report outlines the way forward for the Council's key strategic plans and also sets out a specific proposal for elected members' consultation on the vision for the way forward. And members might recall that we were due to undertake a refresh of both the corporate plan and the business plan, and that was scheduled for the first half of this year. Now, of course, that work has been delayed by our response to COVID-19 and the work we're now doing on recovery from that. But what is very clear is that as a result of COVID-19, our communities and our businesses are facing particular challenges, and some of these are very acute. These are around about poverty, about the impact on the viability of businesses, about well-being and vulnerability, and education, and various other issues which members will be very aware of. And I suppose on the back of that, and particularly in view of the very constrained financial environment that we're likely to face, it's very important as part of our recovery and leading into our new corporate and business plans that we have a very clear sense of what our priorities are for our communities for the forthcoming period. And the report sets out how the recovery process, which we've spoken about previously at the Emergency Executive, ties into the various plans we have in relation to our workforce, our finances, and of course the Council of the Future programme, and the importance of using some of the learning from the last few months to inform all of that. So on that basis, officers put together what we're calling a straw man that's set out at Appendix 1 to the report, and that sets out some draft priorities, some strategic deliverables for the forthcoming period. And I'd emphasise this is just a draft. It's a starting point for discussion and consideration. And the proposal in the report is that we hold 3 workshops with elected members on a locality basis. The aim is to do that in the early part of next week, so that councillors then have the opportunity to talk about the priorities for their communities and also offer comment on the strawman document so that it can then be updated and revised, a clear vision and set of priorities brought forward, and that would then come to the Emergency Executive on the 25th of this month. So the intention is to circulate details and background papers in relation to these workshops. I hope we'll do that, be able to do that later today. And the recommendations for the Emergency Executive today are to agree the structure of the first business plan and corporate plan, incorporating the recovery plan elements, and that's set out from section 4.2 of the report, and also to agree the proposals for elected member consultation, which are set out in this report. And Convener, happy obviously to take any questions on that.
Thank you for that, Kenneth. It's clear from the work that's been done to date that the refresh of the corporate plan is underway, but our focus has had to move to the response to COVID and now to the recovery plan, which will see the council back into delivering its full services and planning, not to just to deal with the immediate impacts of the pandemic, but the council across the council area, but the longer term impacts. And it's important time that we take a bit of time to reflect on what type of council we would want to see and what our key priorities will be, and in turn that will help us guide members into making decisions about where to direct resources. Gives us an opportunity to streamline the plans, bringing them together in what will become a Falkirk plan, and this will be what our citizens can measure our performance on and hold us to account. It's important that members engage with those discussions and use the workshops effectively to feed into that process. Strawman is designed as a conversation starter document for elected members' discussions. It's open to challenge and to change based on elected members' views and experience from working in their own communities, and I anticipate there'll be many common experiences which will enable priorities to be distilled out and identified, which will align with what's currently in our corporate plan, particularly around equity, diversity, poverty, economic growth, climate change and sustainability. But as those priorities distill out, this will inform the actions and the wider engagement with our communities. This will, however, have to be done at pace to assist with informing the decisions around finance and indeed escalating the recovery mode in order to be able to sustain our communities going forward. So I'm happy to move the report as presented by Kenneth, and allows us to move to the next phase very quickly and getting the workshops and doing the work that's needed done. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener, and I echo everything you said there. There is no denying Falkirk Council and all other local authorities face unprecedented financial uncertainty due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and the added uncertainty surrounding Brexit, which this country was dragged into. This will not only affect the current financial year as said, but well into the future. We need to look at every aspect, and the joined up approach contained within this report, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Munro.
A very interesting paper with a big purpose. We have less money and many demands on our funding. So we need to spend our money wisely. On page 10, we have a schematic diagram of Falkirk Council sold, and it's a series of boxes which outline the various strategies we have in words like economic recovery, equalities, poverty, climate change, a series of plans, financial plan, workforce plan, recovery, change and digital strategy. But nowhere in this version do we see why we're doing these things. By electing to have workshops with councillors and the straw man, we turn the whole topic on its head. Suddenly, we're talking about people, our communities. We want to enhance people's lives. We'll inspire employees and communicate to solve shared problems. We're trusted by removing bureaucracy and red tape. We will enable people to develop new skills, live happy and rewarding lives. We are ambitious. We will create sustainable services that have a positive impact on people's lives. What was a dry corporate plan becomes alive. You can see how it relates to people and to our communities. Every councillor can contribute their knowledge and share the concerns and priorities for their communities in this workshop. That everyone will take part to share that information and those things that their communities need. So what funding we have can be directed to where it will have the most impact for the people we represent.
Thank you, Ellen. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, Convener. I think it's fairly straightforward. It's basically building on what was already there, and given that the backdrop to this, of course, is that we faced a £150 million cut over the past 10 years. £76 million to come. 12 million we're looking at this year, and we've got the added difficulty of COVID and a potential black hole of however many millions. So it is important that we refresh the plans and that we add in a recovery from COVID. And I think it's very important that we capture the learning from this, the breaking down the silos and everybody working smarter and working digitally. And we've already seen a transformational change. So I think setting up these workshops and setting up the straw man is an ideal way for everybody to engage and develop this plan. As Kenneth said, it's a draft and it will be developed in these workshops, and hopefully we establishing this framework we can develop a positive outcome for the future of the people of Falkirk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Any other members? Councillor Reid.
I wonder if I could ask a question on 410, that's the timetable for the plans. Does this presuppose that we are going to have a recess? Long gap between June and September.
Kenneth.
Thank you, Convener. It doesn't presuppose a recess, or it doesn't make any judgment about the length of the recess. I suppose it's more about the sense of the time it's likely to take to bring together the work that needs to be done. Clearly, if we can bring that forward, we will. But I suppose that we've already experienced significant delay because, as a council, we've rightfully been focusing our resources on responding to the pandemic and all that's brought forward. So these are indicative timescales. If we can bring things forward more quickly, then that is something we would do. But it makes no assumptions one way or the other about the governance arrangements beyond what's been set to the end of June.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other Councillor Alexander?
I've been thinking about what Councillor Monroe had to say, and and she said that there was one thing that wasn't contained within the reports, and that's why we do all the things we do. She then gave a dozen reasons why we do what we do, and I don't think that there can be any confusion that local government has a major role to play in tackling inequality and tackling the issues of racism, as we've seen through our education system. I hope we tackle sectarianism when we were there. The whole issue of what we do should be there. We need to be ambitious with this programme, and I'm glad to hear that we have the support of the Labour group and hopefully the Tories as well, because we need to be ambitious as we go forward. This is a major change coming in our society that I hope will be welcomed. Thank you for that, Convener.
Thank you. Okay. Any other member? Are we happy to agree the report? Agreed. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, we now move on to item 5, which is COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan. And Mrs. Geisler, are you going to take that one? Or?
No, I'm happy to do that, Convener. Yes, members will recall that as a number of the decisions that they made earlier on in the year in relation to reports they would like to see included a report on the proposals for the Economic Recovery Plan in relation to our post-COVID, well, I suppose a continuing COVID in the post-COVID world. Obviously, this is within the context of a national picture, both a national UK picture and a national Scottish picture, and indeed an international context. But we do have an expectation that Scotland's GDP will be significantly reduced. It's been suggested that will be up to 33% in the months following COVID as a consequence of the the measures that were taken to suppress the virus and the continuing requirements for things like social distancing. We have the advantage here of having a very well established and mature a partnership, the Falkirk Economic Partnership, is a foundation for this work moving forward. We also have the advantage of having an existing economic strategy, which will clearly need to be reviewed in the context of what I've just said. We have a situation where we know that many more of our citizens will be in financial difficulty. We know that many of our businesses will be facing strain. We've already had 220 businesses seeking support from the council, and obviously to make access to some of the government's support that's been available. But as we move into a world where the furlough support arrangements are to be adjusted, then there is a real risk that some of these businesses will not survive beyond without that level of financial support. Anything that we do will be, as I say, closely linked to a national approach. Both governments have already established arrangements for leading on this critical recovery area, but obviously we need to have our own response developed on a local basis. And the draft plan that I'm presenting to you today is taken forward with reference to the 4 R's referred to in paragraph 4.3, and these relate to response. We're obviously still in a response element of this. To reset, we'll need to recalibrate our plans and our approach to things. I think what's critically important here is to mirror the view that was expressed by the First Minister that in essence Scotland is has no less ambitious plans for itself. It's just we're starting these plans from a different place, and I think that can be reflected in the approach in Falkirk as well. We were obviously very ambitious in terms of our economic future prior to COVID, and we need to retain that ambition, but just look at it in a different context. The last 2 elements are restart and recover. We need to support businesses to get started again, either in providing the same services or making the same goods as they did before, or indeed other things, recalibrating their offering. And then there's the recovery element of that, which is our longer term proposal. Also in our armoury, we have our TIF, the Tax Incremental Finance Initiative, which is well established along with a number of other things, and our plans for the investment zone, which are very ambitious, as I've touched on as well. The plan itself, and I'll touch on a few areas that are in the particular plan, but it is the early effort at a draft, and we are obviously, it's been prepared in consultation with partners contributed to this. This is a partnership, but we would like partners to have another look at this, partners and stakeholders to have another look at this and make contribution where we wish, and that's why there's provision in the plan for that to happen. But also we're looking to have consultation, wider consultation with businesses as well before this is finalised. So that work, subject to members agreeing this proposal today, will move on from today. So turning to the plan itself, obviously there is a context that I've described to you within which we are operating, and we need to be cognisant of that fact and understand that we are part of that bigger picture in terms of challenges. Turning to the various elements of the plans, in terms of Respond, there are a number of areas there that members will be familiar with. We are supporting businesses through processing the grants and loans, which has been very successful, and it's a great tribute to my colleagues that has been managed so effectively, and that's been the feedback that we've had from businesses. They're very grateful for that level of speed and efficiency with which these have been managed. We're also providing significant advice to businesses through our normal business support channels, and there's some very strong messages and communication that we are providing to businesses too in terms of support. We do need to keep all that work going. It is a very critical element of the plan, is understanding the impacts of the COVID-19 situation. Now, these aren't always going to be evident at the moment, and some of these will not be evident for some time to come. But it's really important that we understand what these are, because we need to know what we are planning for. What are we planning to respond to? And for that, we need to know what these impacts are. And there's a lot of work ongoing at the moment within both governments to help us to understand what that would be. We have, as I mentioned already, existing relationships, which and we're relying on these in terms of the work that we're currently doing. That's through Scottish Enterprise, Business Gateway, and the business-facing teams that we have within the council and within our partnerships. In terms of this is about us understanding what this expression "new normal" means within a business context. You'll have heard that mentioned a number of times. What constraints for businesses that require to be addressed? And also, what are the opportunities for businesses? A number of businesses have been, as they are, quite agile and have managed to recalibrate some of their own business arrangements already and moved into some diversification in terms of their activities. For instance, I was involved in a meeting, a national level meeting last week, and it turns out that Scotland is now a net exporter of PPE equipment, because a number of businesses have moved into that sector during the COVID crisis. So that's something that the government is keen to support, and obviously that will filter down to a local level. But that's just an example of opportunities that there may be for businesses to diversify into other areas. We will obviously be connecting into national government in that respect, as I've described, but we have a very strong Forth Valley arrangements as well, which we will use, and we will link into the work that's been done in academia in terms of helping to describe what the new normal might look like. We need to focus on key sectors in our area. That will include very strong sectors around chemicals and manufacturing, construction and logistics. These are all very strong elements that exist locally and feature in our plans for our investment zone. And a key sector, of course, for us will be our town centres and what it is that they need to manage. So this section is about us developing our plans to address the impacts once we understand what these impacts are. So moving on to this third part, which is restart. And I must emphasise, these things aren't consecutive. They will be running concurrently. We're doing work in respect of all of these, but these are the sort of order in which they will start to manifest themselves in the business community. But the restart element is really about implementing these plans that I've described already. It's about, again, providing support and guidance to businesses for reopening their business to help to support the new growth that I've described, these new opportunities that I've described, issues and opportunities around carbon reduction in new businesses. We will need to focus on, as I say, we're looking to recalibrate our TIF, perhaps our investment zone work, and the town centre action plan, which we have, obviously will have to be reviewed as a consequence of that. So this is just starting to implement these changes. We need to understand what the external financial support that's going to be available for businesses is, and pursue that funding and make sure that businesses are well placed to access it. We need to support businesses in respect of training and things like as an opportunity that's come along as part of the shutdown. The final element of the plan is around recover. We will be in this for the long haul. The plans will require to be reviewed as we go along and to reflect the impact of the recovery measures and also the emerging opportunities that I've touched on. And this section is presented, this part of the section is presented on a sectoral basis. And these are sectors that we've been working with businesses on for a long time. So we've got a very strong tourism sector. This is about restoring that and developing it further, given these opportunities that I've described. We need to stimulate capital investment. That's a key. That'll be a very key element of our economic recovery. So this will be around infrastructure, housing and construction. LDP2 is heading your way shortly. That's an opportunity for us to put down our marker in terms of moving forward. We will also, there's very clear agenda for us around placemaking and opportunities to attract investment for that. We will need to support the workforce as well, make sure that the workforce in our area is fit for purpose in terms of moving forward in this new normal that I've described. I've touched on our investment that we would need to, we're hoping to accelerate the delivery of this programme. Our investment zone proposition has never been stronger as an economic stimulus for transformation package. If ever we needed their investment zone, we certainly need it now. I've touched on partnerships. There's a very strong partnership theme to the strategy. The partners have been involved. This isn't a Falkirk Council strategy, it's a partner strategy. And we've reflected on this in the previous report to members that's described the structure of our recovery plan. So this is tying in nicely with that. Next steps, we will be progressing this with the further engagement with our partners. There's an economic partnership meeting on Friday. This will be a key element of discussion there. There will also be engagement with specific sectoral businesses, the tourism partnership, which is a meeting they've just met recently. So in terms of all of our existing arrangements, these will be taken forward through that engagement. We'll also be doing a consultation exercise with our business sector, and we're hoping to do that through Citizen Space, and that will be happening quite soon as well. It's very encouraging to see that some of our partners, for instance, INEOS, have offered to lead on bringing the chemical sector operators together, so that's an industry-led business. And Forth Port and logistics sector, we've also got very strong links into the food and drink sector with our existing businesses here. So this won't be a Falkirk Council-led initiative, this will truly be a partnership initiative, but we need to look at long-term gains and also what impactful projects, as we described in the report, but also where there are early wins for us and opportunities. So, Convener, that would all I'm proposing to say on this. Obviously, I'm happy to try and answer any questions. There's obviously the schedule at the back of the report with a bit more structure to it, including potential for time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Geisler. This is a report that's very detailed, and I appreciate that there's been a lot of reading in it. And it's one of those things that it doesn't matter what officers do; they either give you too much information or not enough. So I apologise if people found that quite detailed and complex, but I think it's important to understand the breadth and depth of the work that's going on. As the Director said, the Falkirk Recovery Plan is ambitious, and it should be ambitious, and it should remain ambitious. It's at times such as these when we're facing a recession, it's important for the public sector to act as a catalyst for the economic growth and recovery. The effectiveness of the strategy will only deliver if it's done in partnership with others, and our joint local businesses and agencies are very much up for this, and we believe that we can actually make a real impact working collaboratively. The economic recovery of the Falkirk area is to be kick-started with the four-stage plan with the 4 Rs that the Director has detailed. One of those particular ambitious programmes within that is in getting the area back on track, is asserting the fact that we have a role to play nationally in the country's economy, in particular the industrial complex at Grangemouth. And therefore it's important we continue to engage with both the UK and Scottish Government to accelerate our £235 million bid for the investment zone around our growth deals. Consultation with businesses and partner organisations are to take place to ensure that the actions at all levels in the recovery plan, and it helps prepare the area's economy for what will be a new normal, promoting a more greener, more inclusive economy. Our immediate focus has been on the response to COVID-19 and the need to help businesses to cope with the impact. We want to move to recovery as soon as possible. The exact timescales for that delivery will be determined by the ongoing relaxation around the rules imposed by lockdown and the stages of COVID-19, but it's important that we do have a clear plan ready to implement at the right time. Consulting with our business sectors will bring together many views as possible so that the plan can have the broadest support. The plan will help to get the area back on track, protecting as many jobs as possible, with the ultimate ambition of seeking business recovery, job growth and a cleaner, more inclusive economy in the longer term. It's not going to be easy, but there's a solid determination to get the work done and start seeing success as soon as possible. The key to rapid success is the partnership working and everyone getting behind the plan. We know that many businesses are finding it difficult right now, but our commitment we are aiming to see the significant results at the other side. Work and recovery will take place through working with small to medium-sized enterprises, as well as at a strategic level to deliver major projects through the investment zone, through their TIF and our other aspects like the gateway. It's important that we work with the sectors of the economy that are particularly important to local area, and tourism is one of those particular areas, considering we have over 2,000 people who were employed within the tourism sector. That is something we want to kickstart, and it's something that we could probably do very quickly in getting that moving. Also within the manufacturing, chemicals, housing and construction, food, drink and retail, and indeed our town centres, aspects that we'll be able to get some quick hits to get things moving and stimulate the regeneration. Others will take a bit longer and require some capital investment in order to act as that catalyst. Since the start of COVID-19, the area has seen an increase in universal credit claimants to rise to more than 11,000, and a rise of 66% in unemployment claims between March and April 20. This will have a significant impact on our economy across the board, but also on health and well-being. Therefore, it's important that we stimulate the economy and create the job opportunities, and we do that in a managed way and at some pace in order to sustain our own local economy, but also our communities. So I'm happy to move the report that this then is taken to our economic partners for their comment, and that plan be further developed and brought back to members about how our economic recovery programme can be taken forward. Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Reserve the right to come back.
Right, okay, you were seconded under the right to come back, is that?
Yeah,
We only caught the end of it, sorry.
okay, right. Formally second and reserve the right to return to the debate.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Munro.
Really challenging issue that we face, and a crucial element for the whole area, and will be critical for many small businesses who don't have large workforces or deep pockets. If business fails, it's important to remember it's someone's life and family which are impacted. And as said by Mrs. Geisler, there's some real positives in where we are now as a council, because the team led by Paul Ferguson and Pete Reid have done an excellent job compared to many other councils in providing this financial support for our local businesses. In the draft plan that outlined, there are certainly some good ideas, but crucially, very few timescales. And often we're talking of the bid, which is a very small group of people endeavouring to carry out some fairly major tasks. As a group, we're all agreed that there's huge urgency to this, and that doing things in the same way is no longer an option. If we are to have plans, but they do need to have timescales, and we need to know that the groups concerned have the capacity to deliver for business in the timescales that should be laid out. So, do we have sufficient people, and can we energise and empower local business to get involved and help support measures as Mrs. Gale said, the BP we're doing, and if we can support these measures and trying to help all local business viable and on track, and that will help protect jobs for our communities in the longer term. And I think it needs to be that overall partnership that's going to make the difference, not just things that we have put in our plan. And I really do want to emphasise the need for timescales. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. I think that's the timescales will evolve from some of the discussions with our partners. And again, what will happen is people will be expected to take on responsibilities for certain aspects. But I'll just ask Mrs. Geisler for a bit of clarification around that.
Yes, that's correct, convener. Obviously, this is a plan. We have to reconfigure the plan, adjust the plan, depending on the responses that we get to our business engagement exercise and the work that we're doing with our more established partners. So this is the partnership's views at the moment, but the plan needs to be finalised, and a key element of that will be to determine some of the timescales. What I do see flowing from the plan is a number of projects which will have their own project plan and timelines attached to these. There's an importance for us to be agile around this. As you know, I'm very keen to chase the money. So if there is funding available, that may well determine where our priorities will sit. But we are determined to make sure that all sectors of business are supported through this process. Just a couple of other points. I was pleased to hear the point that you made about small businesses. They are a key business sector in our area, and we've been very keen to support these through these difficulties. As you say, this is not just people's arm's length business. This is about impacting on everyone's life. So we are very alert to that, and I'm pleased to hear you saying that they did feel supported through the work that's already been done. There's an important point you made about capacity. Obviously, my colleagues are all excellent, but there are only a limited number of them, and we will have to be very careful about how that resource is deployed. But I'm also pleased that you've reflected on the fact that the businesses sector does seem to have stepped up and will is leading on a number of these work streams as we would expect them to do. And that's the example that we've found through the partnership anyway, which is a really strong foundation for us moving this work forward. So we will be seeing timescales at some point in the future. You will be seeing timescales associated with specific projects. So I can assure you that will come forward. But at the moment, this is the first iteration of this plan, and I'm really hoping that members can support this as a direction of travel for us moving forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Geisler. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, Convener. It is important that we work in partnership with all the businesses in the area, and it also is important that we set milestones and timescales. First of all, just on we responded pretty well, and I'd just like to pay a personal tribute to the catering staff and to the domestic staff who certainly stepped up to the plate, if you pardon the pun, and they were up early hours in the morning getting the grab bags ready, and they've done a terrific job as far as I'm concerned. So I'd just like to have that acknowledged. I just wanted to touch on capacity. Certainly, Falkirk Bid and Business Gateway, it sort of seems to be centred around them. But I just wanted to touch on environmental health have a big role in getting the small, medium businesses up and running and giving them guidance on how they should restart. So I just wondered, when we had the smoking ban and it was being introduced, we took on a couple of extra people. I think they were police officers or former police officers, and they were involved in going around enforcing the ban, if you like, and giving people guidance. So might it be prudent to recruit a couple of additional people to go around and to train them up and go around and help the small and medium businesses, give them guidance on how they should be setting up their business, keeping social distancing and getting their business moving. If maybe I could get an answer to that and reserve the right to come back in, please.
Okay, Robert, thanks for that. It's my understanding from a recent paper at COSLA that there is additional funding being made available for trading standards officers. I think it's up to 50 throughout Scotland, but I'll get confirmation from Mrs. Geisler.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, there is funding that is to be made available in terms of the support of that order. I'd also like to say that the teams that we have been working throughout lockdown, as you would expect. Environmental health colleagues have an approach in respect to business which is very much a collaborative approach, They always see any sort of enforcement as being a failure because they believe that their job is to support businesses to comply with the various regulations and to succeed. So that relationship is a very strong one, and it's one that we'll be founding on moving forward. Although, as I say, my colleagues have been working with businesses at the moment to make sure that they can comply. I've also provided advice through various sources, websites. There's a business e-sign that went out, I think, yesterday from Pete's team, which had incorporated some environmental health information in it in relation to safe opening of businesses. So we are using the resources that we have very wisely. They're as I say, they're excellent officers, and they're all working very hard in the lockdown period. Any additional resources will be very much valued, and we can certainly use them and building on the arrangements that we currently have. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on that moving forward.
Okay, Councillor Bissett.
Thank you, Convener. I was just wondering, have we done a kind of benchmark exercise to find out where businesses were before COVID and where they are now, and what new initiatives have taken, and we could use that learning and share it? I was just thinking, really, you know, I mean, they must know where they were before, what profits they were making, how many employees they had, and where they are now, and what changes they've had to make. So I think it would be good to collate that information and see what help we can give them, and collate the information on what adaptations and changes they've made that we could share with other businesses and moving forward. But I mean, I don't disagree with the plan. It is a bit wordy, but I guess and you've got to read it, and it doesn't sort of pop out at you, sort of kind of the key drivers. So I kind of personally would like to see it distilled down a wee bit and broken down a bit, make it a bit easier to read for everybody. The 4 phases, if you like, are I'm quite happy with them. You know, that respond, reset, restart, and recover. And as Ms. Geisler said, they will be running concurrently, and I think it'll be subject to review, and we'll have to keep tweaking them until we get where we need to be. But overall, look at the economic partnership. We need to work well together to develop a really good strategy, and I think this is the bones of it. I think it will be developed, and it will change. And I don't have any particular issues with it, and I would agree with the recommendations, and we'd be pleased to hear what anybody else has got to say.
Okay. Mrs. Geisler, do you want to say something around where the businesses were and where they might be? I know it's going to be difficult to get a clear picture of where they might be or where they might go, because there's still a bit to you know, evolve from this, and probably not in a good way, but it's not terribly clear or not defined at the moment, and it will change.
I think one of the areas of work that Scottish Government is very heavily involved with just now is information gathering. We're doing a lot of data analysis in all areas, both in terms of the response and the health data, but also in respect of other aspects of the recovery plans and the recalibration and the renew strategy, which is, as it's been described, within government. So we will be able to rely quite heavily on the data that they're collecting, and how that gives us a good picture nationally, but also in terms of that will help us as well to determine that. But on a local basis, we will also be gathering information from businesses. What we're particularly interested in is what is it that can be done to support them to get back to where they were before, if that's indeed where they want to go. And we're also particularly interested in capturing information on the diversification elements that I described. What are the other businesses models that they have used to keep going? I mean, for example, lots of pubs, for instance, they're doing takeaways. I know that they're doing like delivery of food and delivery of beer, things like that. So is this a business that we're going to look to expand in the future? So these are types of examples of things where businesses have organically changed to respond to the crisis, but these are business strands that they may well wish to build on in the future. So that's information that we are currently gathering locally as best we can, and we will be endeavouring to support businesses as they move through that. For me, I think there's nothing better to take your point about things being wordy and to reflect on Councillor Lynn's point earlier on about people. There's nothing more compelling in terms of these strategies that we formulate than telling a story. You know, an example of someone who has done something clever or outstanding, and these are the things that we need to capture. Is that how is this business adjusted in the current climate to come out the end of it different but still intact? And these are the business stories we want to gather. These are best practice that we can pass on, and it gives that human face to things as well, doesn't it? And it shows that we are people and we are in this together to bring the economy back. It's not a faceless thing, it's all about people and their livelihoods.
That's it.
Okay, right, thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
I note from the report that there's nothing in it regarding the cost of COVID. I'm just wondering if we as a council have an indicative figure as to how much this has cost us so far. There's also part of the report which details 2,200 businesses that have received support from the council, but there's no figure attached to that either. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Smale, do you want to say something around the finances, and you may be able to give us an update on the payments that have been made in the way of grants and way of support to businesses?
In terms of the volume of support that the council is managing on behalf of the Scottish Government, the main business grant funding, there's something in the order of 21 million that's been passed through to date. So it's very much front-end loaded. So albeit there'll be still some throughput, I would suggest the bulk of the payments have now been made, and there's obviously other categories, but of a lower value. In terms of the cost of COVID, a good question, and one that we're working on, not just in Falkirk, but across Scotland. And indeed, there's an exercise live at the moment conducted by COSLA to seek input from each council as to their estimates of the overall financial impact of COVID that then can be aggregated at a Scotland-wide level, and that clearly will inform engagement with the Scottish Government in terms of the level of funding. Slightly ahead of the preparation of that, we will be submitting a paper to your next meeting on the 25th, which will give an initial first estimate of the aggregate impact of COVID. It will be inevitably and inherently heavily caveated, because as you'll appreciate, there are so many variables in the mix, and we're still only halfway through the third month of the financial year. So those caveats are inevitable. But at least it will give you, when it comes to you, as I say, in a fortnight, an initial stab of what we think the aggregate impact will be. And of course, sitting behind that, there's the question, what then is done to manage that situation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any other members? Councillor Reid.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It'd be quite easy to slump into despondency when you see the figures put before us. However, our response to the pandemic's been really excellent, quite staggering on the part of the services. We should rightly be proud of the efforts put in by our staff. I don't want to mention individuals, but all the services have responded really magnificently. And there's no reasons why that shouldn't happen when we start to recover as well. Just one or two questions. Rona mentioned quite positively the investment zone seemed to be going ahead. I just wondered to what extent that was the case, because the government obviously has borrowed billions and they'll be looking to, I think, pull in some of that money back maybe.
Okay, I don't know who wants to respond to that, whether Kenneth or Rona.
I can pick up that one. Obviously, we have had a number of discussions with civil servants and indeed politicians, both at a Scottish Government and a UK Government level, which had meant that our deal had progressed to a pretty advanced stage, and then along came COVID. So I think in terms of my earlier comments, I think we will need to, these discussions have restarted. We're continuing to certainly with civil servants at an officer level, these have restarted. But I think one of the things we might need to do is to pause and have a look at the plans to make sure that they are tying in with the opportunities around the recovery agenda as well. So for instance, there's a strong theme in our investment zone proposition that related to carbon reduction and the green initiatives. And certainly from my reading of various things that are coming from government, that is an area that in which government remains keen to invest. I think the improvement we've seen in air quality during lockdown have to pursue that agenda. So we just need to look again at our the various elements that are in our investment zone proposition to make sure that these are tying in now with the recovery agenda, which may obviously need us to accelerate some of the interventions that we were looking to deliver as well. The other thing I've said earlier was about chasing the money. Prior to lockdown, there were certainly funds emerging that would have tied in quite nicely with some of the elements of investment zone. So we may have pursued funding with those strict parameters. We need to re-examine some of these opportunities again before we move forward. But we are still in discussion. We are still pressing forward with this. We had a very strong argument before, and as I said earlier, the argument is all the stronger now that we are in the situation that we are in.
Thank you. Just another question, Chair.
There was a very positive meeting with the new Under Secretary of State Ian Stewart last week in relation to our investment zone and our growth deal bid, and that is continuing. They are still committed to providing growth deals to every part of the country, and there's discussions happening with the Treasury around that. So we're continuing to press that, but also not just for the aspect of equity for Falkirk. It's highlighting the national critical infrastructure that is within our locality and the impact that can have globally on our economy.
Another question for Rona, that's LDP2, which I understand is coming to Council in June. The question is, had we known about the pandemic, which we wouldn't obviously, would it be a different LDP2? In other words, does the pandemic change anything?
That's a really interesting question, and it reminds me of conversations that we had about this following 2008. Because if you recall, we did have a discussion at that time about how fit for purpose were our strategic plans in relation to our land use planning proposals. So my answer to you is yes, it is fit for purpose, because we need to approve it and get it out the door. But just like every other planning plan that we have, as soon as it is approved, it starts to become out of date. And I think that what we need to do is retain LDP2 as our framework. It's a sound framework for moving forward, but we need to, and we're very good at this, take a very flexible and pragmatic approach to investment proposals that come our way, and not allow the planning process to be a constraint on those opportunities. So the answer is yes, I think it's sound, and as always, it's the Bible that Councillor Alexander refers to. But there is nothing to stop us and being able to use that as our foundation, but take a flexible and pragmatic approach to proposals that come forward for us to us without discarding the plan. Of course, I'm not suggesting we do that, but within its context, I think there's enough there to not only support end development, but also to promote development. As you know, there are developers you're looking to see being confirmed so that they can make investment decisions associated with that. So the sooner we can get this one confirmed, the better for that purpose.
Thank you. One further question, with your indulgence, Chair. That's about Falkirk bid. In what condition is Falkirk bid at the moment?
Pick that up. Some people are frozen. Yes, I'm happy to do. The Falkirk bid is, if you'll excuse the vernacular, working its socks off. There is a new bid manager in place, and she's been thrown into the deep end and to mix all the metaphors to hit the ground running. There's been a great deal of engagement with businesses in the town to support them through this particular crisis. So I think that Elena's made strong links with the businesses that are there and has worked very hard. There's a recruitment process that was suspended that will have to be picked up again. So another vacancy in the team, and then I think that should be about to full strength. We have the town centre action plan, as you know, and I referred to earlier on, that will have to be reviewed as a consequence of once we understand better the impacts of COVID, and the bid will be at the heart of that front and centre. So they have been really, really busy, and they're rearing to be part of moving the agenda forward for the town centre.
Yes, I think it'll be interesting to see how shopping habits during the pandemic continue afterwards, but that remains to be seen. With your indulgence again, one just last question, please, Convener. There's reference to planning and licensing being, shall we say, more agile in dealing with applications. I take it that's how one interprets that.
Yes, of course, that's just the point I was making about our approach to our flexible and pragmatic approach to things. I've had many investors in our area who have said that to me. And in fact, one of them said, can we quote you as an example of good practice to planning authorities in England? I said, yes, please do feel free to do that. So we do have a reputation for being supportive of business within, obviously, the appropriate confines. We have good relationships with investors. The planning teams have been working throughout, and you'll have seen from the lists that are coming through that the recommendation lists are significantly reduced. That's just, I think, a feature of the pandemic. But I'm really hopeful that once we begin to settle down, that investment decisions that have been put on hold will come forward, and we will be very willing to meet with developers and investors to help to steer them towards an appropriate solution for our area and see some money being put back into the economy through that way. So obviously licensing, our colleagues in the licensing team are very similar. They are, and we work very closely together with them. So I have every confidence that we'll be able to support the applicants that come forward to get their projects delivered quickly, to get their consents through quickly, and to get their projects on the go quickly as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, conveners. Thank you.
Okay. I've got Councillor Alexander, and I'll come to you, Councillor Coombs.
There's two words in the heading that I think are very clear. The first is draft, which means that, as we know, this document will change, it will evolve, and so it should. It needs to evolve, it needs to be inclusive, it needs to be flexible. The second is recovery. It's recovery from what? You know, the covert, we're not halfway through. Hopefully, we're at least halfway through. But if there's a second spike, then, you know, God knows what's going to happen. So the recovery plan is very, very thin at the moment in terms of the detail that perhaps members will be looking for. But there's a good reason for that, and the reason is I've outlined. In relation to the human touch that was mentioned early on in the discussion, yeah, there's a human touch. Each of these businesses perhaps more than just husband and wife, one person, operators. A lot of them are families, and we've got to be as flexible as we can in terms of dealing with these people, dealing with these businesses. In relation to the wider issues that we face, then things will be different. There's no doubt that things will be different, and we need to ensure that where they are different, that there's cohesion in terms of what we're delivering. There's cohesion and support that we're giving. There's cohesion in terms of the whole issue of the business, where it started off from, where it will end up from, and end up to, and the bit in the middle, which is the important part. So again, I sort of welcome the support that has been given to this paper. I think it's a good paper. I think that it's delivered at a time when we have probably more questions than answers at this point in time. But that's something that is to be understood. I would hope that any reasonable person would recognise that we are where we are at the moment. It's not where we want to end up. So I would certainly commend the paper. Thank Mrs. Geisler for it. It's up to the usual standard, and her and her team have been working tirelessly. I know all the way through this pandemic. Finally, just associating myself with the comments praising the staff. It's been an absolutely phenomenal effort on the staff, and it's on behalf of our staff. We have worked well with the other agencies and the public sector in general. I think has come out of this with a lot of credit, and quite rightly so. Where we go from here is obviously something that they will develop through time. But I look forward to working with Rona and her team, and as well as other members in terms of the development of the economic development programme and the recovery plan in particular.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Coombs.
Thanks, convener. As David has just said, yes, it is a draft paper, but one of the questions, it's really just a quick question. It was about I wanted to stress the importance of the community wealth building part of the paper. Obviously, we're aware that many other areas, and previously I've spoken about the Bristol Pound, and I think that we do need to change the way we do things. The Preston model has been a fantastic example that I think we should be trying to work towards, perhaps using cooperatives and things like that. And I just wanted to, as I said, exaggerate that fact and ask if there were any good examples of the community wealth building going on at the moment.
Mrs. Geisler.
I think that one of the things often during this pandemic is how amazing communities have been in their response to supporting each other, and how we really need to be able to capture some of that structure that's emerged, particularly in our work with the voluntary sector moving forward. Now, I'd see Kenny's on the call, Kenny Gillespie's on the call, and obviously he leads in the Enable Communities work stream through Council of the Future. So I think there's probably more opportunities there for us now than there were before to capture that communities have been doing, identify how we can then make that into the types of projects that you've just been talking about. But I think our chances of success there are now much higher than they ever were before.
Thank you. Kenny, do you wish to add anything to that?
Convener, yeah, just to concur what Mrs. Geisler was saying, we have great opportunities and we can see what the communities can do together. If we ever needed to have that support, it's there, and it's about enhancing that. The teams that are working with them now, we're collating that information and we're looking to pull something together to make sure that we've got something that we can take forward and build on the ways that we've been working now, and something that we can take forward that embraces what the communities are looking for in partnership with ourselves and our third sector and other partners.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, is there any other member? Can we agree the report? Agreed, thank you. We move on to the recovery arrangement for employees returning to work, and Mr Ritchie, you're going to take that report?
Yes, thank you, convener. This is one of a number of reports that was requested by elected members at the first meeting of the emergency executive. This is a significant piece of work which will require the need for clear planning, good communication, but we shouldn't underestimate just how complex this piece of work will be. The successful return to work is likely to be achieved through the preparation of work plans that will go through various iterations in their development. National guidance will provide an overarching framework. Relevant aspects of the government's route map as set out in the appendix to the report will be used to provide our local plans. The local solutions need to be considered to include issues such as social distancing, PPE, risk assessments, signage and cleaning materials, and that's not an exhaustive list. Reference is made in the report to ongoing dialogue that we've been having over the course of the last few months with our trade unions, and that has worked well in terms of keeping them in the loop and also giving them a forum to raise any issues and concerns that they have had over the course of the last number of months, and the sequencing of these meetings with the trade unions is referenced in the report. And members will see from the appendix that the trade unions will be involved in the group and the subgroups who will take forward the various work streams associated with returning to work. For a large percentage of those currently working from home, that will continue to be the case for some time to come, as even at phase 4 of the policy set out in the government's route map, the expectation is that those who can work from home will continue to be doing so. For other activities such as construction and outdoor work, they will come back to work earlier under the government plans, and arrangements are in place at the moment to work through how we get these activities back in a safe manner. The final point I think I'd like to make, convener, is an important point, and that's one around employee wellbeing. So a number of support arrangements have been set up and will be set up to help employees with their wellbeing in their return to work. There's no doubt that this has been a stressful time, and the return to work will be a stressful time for colleagues too. Advice on wellbeing is on our internet page. An employee support service has been started, and of course we would expect managers and team leaders to be having one-to-one chats with each of their teams just around the specifics associated with each individual's return to work, and trying to ensure that wherever possible we can pick up on individual circumstances and have employees return to work with us as much support arrangements in place as possible. We've said in the report, convener, that we'll come back to elected members with an update once we've made some further progress down this particular road, and the recommendations are set out in the report for members' consideration.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. I appreciate that this is an emergency executive and we would normally expect decisions to be brought to us, but I think this is one of the reports that I felt was important that members were able to see and have assurance around going forward. Because our staff are our biggest asset, and I think they have demonstrated that during this particular pandemic. They've stepped up, keeping essential services going, many of whom have been on the front line, and others who have been working from home, keeping our other services ticking over quietly in the background, and all of whom have been doing a fantastic job. And we've already heard comments from others in relation to that. I'm sure that everyone across the piece fully supports the work that's been done and the time and effort that's gone in from our senior management team right down to those who have been out on the front line delivering services, whether it be our carers or our refuse collectors. We can't forget either those that have not been able to work in their primary role but have volunteered to support by working in other roles to support the delivery of these essential services, and we would not have been able to have done such a robust job without that happening across the piece, whether that be within supporting our education services or our home care. We have a roadmap to take us out of lockdown in a phased way, and this will enable council services to be restored to its full function. But many of those services will not be back to full function in what would be considered normal way until we get to phase 4 of the country's roadmap, and that is still some time away. However, it's not likely that we'll be ever back to what was normal and what it was before. We will have to have a new normal. Social distancing is going to be with us for some time to come. And there is an option, there was no option for staff to become accustomed to working from home. They were thrust into that, and while many will have adapted, others will still have to look at how they are able to adapt in the longer term. So it's important that planning has begun now. We need to look at the impacts of COVID, people who have been self-isolating, those that have been shielding, and the anxieties in particular around starting to come back out into socialisation, and that will need to be done in a phased way, and also any changes that may come as a result of COVID to the way that we are asking people to work will have to be managed, and we need to take people with us. And there's going to have to be a range of supports. And first and foremost, we will need to be seen to lead the way in becoming a flexible employer, particularly where there's going to have to be a blended approach, and homeschooling is going to have to continue. And while we have to continue to deliver services, we need to be mindful of the pressures that are also being put on parents. The development of the plans going forward, I've had the full involvement of the trade union partnership, and I think it's important to be able to have that input so that we can go forward collectively. It's a dynamic plan, and it will need to adapt to meet the needs of the workforce as we go forward, particularly because everyone's different, and different circumstances, different services will dictate different solutions. And that's what I think is going to be a real challenge for managers going forward. Any change is difficult, and we have to recognise that, having been thrust upon the magnitude of the change around the pandemic, the change in getting to that recovery is going to be just as challenging for people. And we need to look at our business needs, how we can continue to deliver our business needs, but to how we can do on a one-to-one basis with all of our staff, and with senior management now starting to do all of those contacts in a more concerted way. They've been doing welfare checks right throughout this, but in a more concerted way that is about managing back to usual functions that the council makes. So I'm pleased to see this come forward. It will change in order to reflect any decisions that services then make about their business going forward. But it's a good start, and I hope it's something that we can now share with all our staff and be able to work collectively with them as we get into that recovery mode. I'm happy to move the report. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McHugh. You're on mute, sorry.
It wouldn't go off sometimes, it doesn't seem to work. Thank you, convener. Just like to second that and reserve the right to come back in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, convener. I welcome this report as well. I think it's a kind of roadmap out of this for our employees and trying to get them back to some new normal, if you like. I would like to pay tribute, since we're paying tribute to a lot of people, to the trade unions who, the feedback I've had is that they've worked very well with the council officers, and I'm sure they will continue to work very well. So I was pleased to hear about that engagement, and I'm sure the liaison group will work well to get things moving. I was also pleased to hear about the support for people, maybe around mental health. Big issue at this time. I know their managers in place have been trained up to have counselling sessions or chat to their colleagues. So it is a difficult time. The cuts the councils faced was bad enough, you know, and people are under stress at that time, and still are. And this added pressure of COVID-19 has increased the pressure. So there's no doubt that people's mental health will be affected, and it's good that we've got something in place. And I had a chat with Karen Algie about exactly what is there, and I was quite comforted that we do have things in place that will help everyone, really, you know, if they want a chat about how things are and the pressures they're feeling. I think it's a good report, it's in the right direction. It's going to be baby steps to get things rolled out again and get things moving forward. But, you know, I was thinking about, we have a clap on a Tuesday. I think that's maybe stopped actually, but we should maybe be having a clap for the kids. All the kids that have really knuckled down and have done their best over this period of time and adapted to home learning and stuff like that. So maybe we just need to pay a wee bit of tribute to the kids. That's all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I can concur a wee bit with the resilience of our young people, our children, and coping with the lockdown, although I think there might be a few grey-haired parents around. Councillor Gardner, sorry, that was not meant to focus at you. Grey-haired.
Very much. I can actually open the door and bring my wee boy in if we all want to give him a clap now. I've wanted to clap him back in the heels a couple of times, but that's not allowed. Anyway, I see there's a few people being mentioned and thanked quite rightly so, but I won't mention anybody individually. But I think under my portfolio, certainly, if we look at waste services, bereavement services, roads maintenance, to name but a few, I could name a lot more, and people being redeployed into positions that they had no prior knowledge to. They've given it their all. They've taken some abuse in certain areas, I would have to say, but they've stuck by it. And I think all the employees really do need to be thanked by all of us, and they're getting thanked by the communities, certainly on social media and the likes. I've got a question for Stuart Ritchie here, and it's just a quick one. It's in 3.2, it mentions where we are. Do we know where we are in relation to other councillors, other councils? Is that pretty much standard across other councils in relation to people being in and out of work?
Mr. Ritchie.
Yeah, thanks, convener. So the council submits a response to COSLA on a weekly basis on a number of statistics, one of which is absence levels. So our absence levels at the moment are about 12%, and that's a number which is reducing over the course of 12 months. And that's probably about par for what other councils are across the country, and they are following a similar pattern as well, where it's a downward trend in absence levels.
Thank you, Stuart.
Okay, Councillor Munro.
Thank you, convener. I think Mr. Ritchie's done a very good job of a difficult and detailed process that's going to have to take place. And once again, it demonstrates the imperative for change. We cannot go back to the old ways, and we have to do things differently and balance safety concerns and people's quality of life while still doing a job of work. And the last thing I think I'd like to say is it's really positive to note the amount of employee engagement and union engagement and the teams that are being set up to actually work through this in a collaborative way. So I think that's a real positive too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Colley.
I think just a couple of things. I think it's important at this point in terms of our employees to note that in terms of the Health and Social Care Partnership, the staff are still in respond and in the early stages of recovery and are still on the front line delivering services and delivering services in a compassionate way to people in our community, and I think it's important to say that. I also wanted to just to note, you know, I've had a conversation with Can and been very heartened by the work and discussion around how we support our employees who are not going to be able to come back to work for a while, particularly those who are shielding or in high risk, and the great deal of thought that has been put into that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you. Any Councillor Reid?
Just a quick question to Kenny. I'm assuming that Council House repairs, there's a backlog there, and how one proposes to deal with that, bearing in mind that most of the properties will be occupied.
Kenny, you want to come on? Respond?
No problem. Yes, as you're aware, we're still dealing with emergency repairs and repairs that can potentially impact on emergencies. So we have a plan in place at the present time. My colleague Dave has certainly worked with ourselves in taking that forward. We're prioritising our void properties as well, which is further will come on to the next report. But it'll then move to what we'll call our urgent repairs, which will be the next, and then to our maintenance. What we will say that although we've been that they can't report repairs that weren't getting done, there was good literature put on our websites and information. So the backlog is not as great as we can see at the present time. However, going forward, once things start to move, I'm looking to have to see a rise in repairs. But again, we'll tackle that as and when required, and we'll have a better idea when we see the volume of those.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other member? Are we content to? Oh, sorry, Councillor Nimmo.
Just quickly, going by the report, we've already got 3,200 employees working from home. And I'm just wondering, post-COVID, will we be looking at the possibility of keeping them working from home, the majority of them, if not all of them? And those working from home are obviously getting paid, but there's 720 members of staff fit for work but are unable to for various reasons. Are they still being paid?
Okay, Stuart or Kenneth, who wants to respond?
I'm happy to pick this up, convener. If I don't cover anything, then Kenneth can come in behind. Our plan has always been to try and move to this mixed model of flexible working, where if you don't actually need to physically be in the office, then you should be able to work from anywhere, and that anywhere can be your house, a touchdown area within the council, or a touchdown area anywhere, and providing we've got the IT and security arrangements in place to allow that to happen, and that was our direction of travel, particularly in relation to the numbers being suggested for our HQ, and just trying to drive down the number of people who would actually need to be housed in an HQ. And if you look at the terms of reference that appear in the appendix at the back of the report, the suggestion there is that as we move forward, the working assumption is that people should be looking, where they can, to be working from home, roughly speaking, 3 days a week. So that's a kind of direction of travel that we had in mind pre-COVID, and I guess COVID has probably just speeded that process up a bit, like it has with a number of processes and behaviours. One of the keys to people successfully working at home is to make sure that they have the proper kit to work at home, and again that's referenced in the terms of reference at the back of the report as well. And it's important that people have the proper chairs, the proper screens, proper mouses, etc., etc., and that's something that we need to take on board. It's one thing if you're going to work from home on an ad hoc basis, but if we're going to ask people to work from home on a semi-permanent basis, then their equipment and working surroundings needs to be fit for purpose. So I hope that answers the first part of your question. Second part of your question is, yeah, those who are at home unable to work are still being paid, and that's that would just be in line with what the national policies are as far as sick pay and COVID is concerned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kenneth, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, convener. I mean, Stuart's really covered it, but I suppose the important point, and this ties back to things that a couple of elected members have said in relation to earlier items, is we have in effect accelerated or are able to accelerate our approach to flexible working and working from home. That does have advantages for us in terms of our utilisation of property and technology, and more generally our modernisation of the organisation and how we work in a way which is good for our employees, and I think can also be made good for those that we serve. So the important thing is we don't let these things slip back. It's about seizing on some of these steps we've managed to take forward and ensuring that they become fully incorporated into the new normal.
Okay, thank you for that, Kenneth. If there's no one else, are we happy to agree the report?
Great.
Okay, thank you. To the final item, and that is the allocations review. And Kenny, you're going to take us through the paper.
No, I'm going to. That's okay. No, it's okay. It's a team effort. I'm going to take you through the paper, and Kenny's going to answer the hard questions from elected members. So thank you, convener. The report before you is here for two reasons. First, to allow the council to take forward its rapid rehousing responsibilities, and secondly is to update our housing allocation policy so that when our full housing allocation scheme comes back online as part of our recovery plan, then our housing allocation policy reflects the feedback that we have received as a result of the consultation exercise. And what seems like a while ago, at the executive meeting just before Christmas and prior to that, the scrutiny committee and then the scrutiny panel considered the review of our housing allocations policy and agreed at its meeting in December that we would go out to a period of consultation with our tenants and residents. So the report before you this afternoon provides you with some feedback in relation to the outcomes of that consultation exercise, as well as including in the appendix just the details of what that consultation exercise looked like. And I know at the beginning of the consultation period, we emailed out the consultation plan to all elected members so that they had awareness of what the plan was. I think in summary, convener, it'd be fair to say that the only area where the outcome of the consultation differed from the members' recommendations was in relation to the proposed increase in the percentage of houses to be allocated for homeless. And members can see that in the first appendix to the report, and it's in particular question 5 in the first appendix in the report. So essentially, we know that our statutory requirements lead us to the point where we need to allocate more of our properties to homelessness, but we have some feedback from our residents and tenants saying that they don't agree with that increase going to 50%. So what we have suggested, and it is a bit of a trade-off and a balance, is that rather than increasing the percentage of our allocation to be allocated for homelessness and home seekers, we make that 45% as a concession to reflect the feedback we've received through the public consultation exercise. This will all be the subject of the annual review, and members will recall that the local housing strategy comes to elected members on an annual basis, usually around the autumn. And one of the things contained in that local housing strategy update is just a look back at the year that's just passed and what's actually happened with the allocation of properties in real terms as against the quotas that were set out in our policy. So again, the decisions taken by elected members today would be subject of that review when it comes around, and I guess that would be what, sometime in autumn 2021, by the time we get things up and running and allow, say, a year to pass. So that's a kind of summary, convener, of why the report's here, what the outcomes are from the consultation exercise. I think it's reassuring to note that the vast majority of the recommendations agreed by members in December have been supported through the consultation exercise, with the exception of that one area, and I've suggested a way in which we can tackle that. And with that, the recommendations, convener, are set out in section 2 of the report, and between Kenny and I will be happy to answer questions that members have.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. I'll go to Councillor Hughes as the portfolio holder to speak first.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear me, Gordon.
Thank you very much. Good morning, committee. Although the executive on the 14th of November 2019 agreed to consult on the proposed changes to the housing allocations policy and to undertake a public consultation exercise, I would first like to thank the scrutiny panel under the convenership of Councillor Blackwood for their insightful, in-depth approach. The panel tackled issues such as integrity, balance, the management of housing need, the local connection test, challenges and the role of registered social landlords before coming to their conclusions. I would also like to thank the public for participating in the allocations review consultation, whether that was through, for example, the online questionnaire or focus groups. The public's assistance has provided a robust foundation to the recommendations which are presented today. In 7.2 of the report, it has been shrewdly observed that the amended proposals as presented today constitute a balanced approach between the proposals originally put forward by the Scrutiny Committee and feedback obtained from the public through the consultation process. Also, officers should be thanked for their support and professional expertise throughout this process. I am fully supportive of the recommendations as set out in section 2, as they have been the outcome of a collaborative process shaped by both elected members and the public. Also, officers have ensured that the recommendations fit correctly within the legislative process. I also have confidence in the recommendations as they uphold the integrity of the allocation system and the management of housing need. However, there is always a however. Although these recommendations are excellent, in management terms, they could be described as unbounded, meaning open-ended. Without having a review process built into the process concerning these recommendations, it will be difficult to measure their effectiveness, analyse data or gauge through experience the impact that these recommendations will have on the allocations process, also the individuals and families we wish to assist. Not to reinvent the wheel by creating another reporting mechanism, I would incorporate the outcomes of these recommendations on an annual basis within the local housing strategy. The local housing strategy has 6 priorities. I will just mention 2. Priority 3 and Priority 4. Priority 3, improving access to housing. This priority covers such matters as housing advice, temporary accommodation and support services, tenancy sustainment with future planned rapid rehousing reports factored in. Priority 4, housing and support for vulnerable groups. This priority covers such matters as specialist housing advice through partnership. Older people's housing is reviewed with the housing contribution subgroup. And finally, this priority carries out analysis on the housing needs of vulnerable groups. I am aware that I cannot formally propose matters today. However, my view is that an addendum should be added to recommendation 7. This addendum would not interfere with the recommendations or have the whole process be subject to consultation again. My thoughts on an addendum to recommendation 7 would be: the Executive Committee will review on an annual basis the outcomes from these recommendations as part of the annual local housing strategy report. The first report is expected to be in the autumn of 2021. I would like to thank the committee for listening to me this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I'll go to Councillor Colley, who's going to move the report.
Thank you, Convener. I'll be as short as I can. I want to thank Councillor Hughes for his contribution, and I don't really want to repeat what he's said. However, in proposing a report, I'd like to make a couple of points. In the first instance, I'd like to take the opportunity to publicly pay tribute to the work of our housing staff over the period of COVID-19 in supporting the Housing First approach to continue to meet the needs of those experiencing homelessness. At this time, having a permanent home and the ability for support to be put in place is more vital than ever. And as Chair of Falkirk IJB, the work of the housing team in building maintenance and supporting ensuring that people can be discharged or remain in their own homes has been vital. It's a balance in any allocation policy and trying to meet the needs of current and future tenants, including meeting our responsibilities under the Housing First approach, enabling those without a home to put down roots and be supported to move forward. I think this policy, which has taken a great deal of time and consultation to develop, strikes that balance. From a health and care perspective, the ability to ensure that there's priority for under-occupying and to enable those 50 and over to access housing in the high flats will help to ensure that older people and those with disability whose housing is no longer suitable are more able to access housing to meet their needs. However, as a newly developed and amended policy, I agree with Councillor Hughes that we should have the opportunity to review it within a relatively short period to enable changes, if any, to the policy to reflect the experience of its introduction. To this end, I propose that we accept the recommendations, but with an addendum to recommendation 7, as Councillor Hughes has proposed. The Executive Committee will review on an annual basis the outcome from these recommendations as part of the annual Local Housing Strategy report, and the first report is expected to be in the autumn of 2021. That's the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Colley. Says I'm happy to second, but in the interest of brevity, I will not say any more than that. Councillor Reid, your iPad's about to run out of power. Do you have any questions you wish to ask first? I'll come to you first, just in case.
Thank you, Convener. It's plugged in, but still going flat. Yeah, I've had conversations with both Laura Smith, the author of the report, and Kenny about one or two items, and they've been dealt with very efficiently. The one remaining point is the position of people who, through a different combination of circumstances, end up in private lets and are judged to be adequately housed simply based on the number of rooms available. Now, the private market is sometimes good, but quite often bad, with higher rents, less repairs carried out and so on. Will the new system be sufficiently finessed to deal with cases on an individual basis?
Okay, Stuart, is that a hard question for you or for Kenny?
I think this is a relatively simple question, because the allocations scheme should be based on individuals rather than a scheme which is unbending. So, every allocation that we deal with, we should be dealing with individuals on an individual basis, picking up the individual circumstances relevant at that time. So I'd like to hope that what we've got is a framework there that we can use rather than a system which is unbending.
I think that will be heartening to hear by members. Stuart, Kenny, do you want to add anything?
The only thing I would add to what Stuart was said regarding the private sector market, we have a private sector team that's worked really well and does take forward any complaints that it does have about landlords, and if required, to the Housing Property Standards Chamber, and then ultimately, if things have not improved, then there is the possibility we bring it to Licence Committee for deregistering of landlords. So we're being very proactive, and the standard the private let, certainly in Falkirk, is very high.
In some cases, of course, tenants are frightened to complain about landlords, and we know where they are, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll open up. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, Convener. Just a couple of observations and a question for Kenny. I think this has taken a long time to get to this stage, and it's been well thought through and discussed. And I'd like to thank Councillor Hughes for acknowledging the input of Councillor Blackwood on the scrutiny. He's been very helpful, Councillor Blackwood, in communicating the policy going forward, and we discussed it in detail. And I think it's been a good review, and it's long overdue. So I would just like to just make an observation on the consultation. But all the tenants we've got we got 350 consultations back. Yes, there was 1769 comments, but that was about 5 comments for each consultation. So I just kind of wondered, going forward, I know we advertised it and all the rest of it, we did as much as we could, but I just wonder how we could get that number up. And I'm pleased to see in section 3 that the next step is restoring allocations in the allocation scheme over the next few weeks, and we'll be allocate existing offers currently in the system, and then we'll be making arrangements to have the full allocation scheme up and running. So I think that'll be welcomed by the general public out there. I think they've been waiting for that. Just the question I want to ask. So basically, I agree with the report. I don't have any particular issues with it. I think it's been, as I say, it's been well thought. Section 4.5. 74% agreed that urgent priority on housing influence mental health problems and should be backed by evidence. As this information isn't always easy to come by, how will the service ensure that those with mental health issues will have their applications assessed and the correct banding awarded? I think that's for Ken.
Okay.
And reserve the right to come back in if you don't mind.
Okay. Another hard question. So, Kenny, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, happy to do so if Stuart's happy. Yeah, his mic's went off, so that's fine. Yeah. We recognise that those experiencing mental issues don't always have access to services due to waiting times, and therefore we agreed with partners at our health and social care team to recruit a CPN, which is actually a community practicing nurse within housing. We will be the first housing service to have a community practicing nurse within our service, which again is a first. This will assist us with these assessments and linking people into relevant services. In addition to this, we will consider supported evidence from various professionals, not just those in health, which we have in the past historically, but for example, we will take on board support workers. So we're trying to be very forward thinking and flexible regarding this area.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. Robert, do you want to come back, or is there anything else?
That's a very good response. Thanks, Convener.
Oh, thank you. Lynn Munro.
Thank you, Convener. This has been a report that's been a long time in the making, and I sat on the initial panel before I had to come off scrutiny, and it was a very thorough report, and one in which a difficult and very emotive topic was covered and actually put out to the community to comment on. And the interesting thing is that most of those comments were very positive, and I think as a council, in terms of housing, we have a very positive, I'm not sure what the word is, but we have other local authorities who are now talking of knocking down their high flats, whereas we have high flats that everybody wants to actually apply for and use. So I think as a housing authority, we're particularly successful, and that's in part because of the level of communication that we have with our tenants. And I must commend the team on the report and the addendum actually just as a safety net in order to ensure that the changes that are proposed are going to be suitable in the longer term. So yeah, I'm happy to support the report.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Any other member want to speak or comment? Councillor Bissett.
Thanks for your indulgence, Convener. I'd just like to say we agree with the addendum as well. I don't know of any particular issue around that. And I forgot what I was going to say. I'll leave it at that. I forgot my question.
That's okay. Okay, is there any other member? Councillor Alexander?
Just a quick question for Mr Gillespie. The 73% who indicated that they wanted to see change at the high flats with a reduction in the qualifying age from 60 to 50. Can I ask if we have two separate accounts on that one of which would be for the existing residents of the town centre flats and the flats at quite all the multi-stories, and those who perhaps have aspiration to go in there one day.
Kenny?
I'm not aware that I'll be able to do that with information that we have got to split it down from the two areas. What I can say is that we did launch it up there. We did, but we've not got a specific area to where they actually came. But I will have a look at it and see if I can try and disseminate that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Reid?
I asked that question, but it wasn't possible to extrapolate the flat residents from the others.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, are we happy to agree the report with the addendum?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of this morning's agenda. Can I thank everybody for their time and their patience in using our virtual system. I think we're becoming more used to that now and getting to grips with it. But I hope you have a good day for the rest of the day, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair.